Hello guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe, like all my content, put all your comments and suggestions in the section below, and check out all my other videos once you're done watching this one. And if you may have noticed from the title and the thumbnail, this video is going to be primarily about the Sunbelt. More specifically, it's going to be about the states of North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Now, usually when we consider the Sunbelt, we would take into consideration all of these states in the southern part of the United States. However, these four are going to be the most important and are part of the 7 most important swing states. Usually, I would like to include states like New Mexico or Texas or Florida, but this time around, they're not going to be as close as the last election. For example, in Texas and Florida, these are pretty close margins in 2020, and were a lot more highly contested. This time around, I expect Trump to win both fairly easily in that likely column. There has been a lot of talk about New Mexico getting in that lean margin, maybe closer to being a potential flip, but the data we've seen so far, even though there hasn't been much, hasn't showed that much of a shift for me to do that. So I'm going to keep New Mexico right now in that likely margin. I do think it'll be a lot closer than in 2020, where Biden won it by like 10, 11. I think this time around, Kamala Harris is probably going to win it by around 6, which is just enough to put it in that likely column. And then, so we are left with these 4 states left. We're left with Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. And then I also want to touch upon Virginia a little bit, because we did get a poll in Virginia that is a lot closer than usual. So we'll get to that in a minute. But this video is going to be about the Sunbelt mostly. And let's go over 2020 results. We see here North Carolina is the only Sunbelt state, the only really close one, the only one out of big 7 that Donald Trump held. He lost a little bit of support in Greensboro, Raleigh, and Charlotte, but made up for it in gains in northeastern and southeastern parts. And these are a lot more rural. Northeastern is a lot more traditionally Democrat. And these are areas that we've been seeing registration explode for Republicans, especially in the state of North Carolina. Those early numbers are looking really good for Republicans. And if that continues, I expect Donald Trump to win the state of North Carolina by a little more than what he won it by in 2020. I expect some of these suburban shifts to kind of reverse, especially because Kamala Harris is not going to get that same turnout as Joe Biden. Those were crazy turnout numbers that Joe Biden was able to get, mainly because of COVID. That definitely was a huge factor in his win. But I think the state of North Carolina right now is going to be close, obviously, but I still have it as a 2-point win for Donald Trump. And we see the polls in North Carolina are really close, of course. Trump is up by 0.1, and that's mainly driven by a Quinnipiac poll right here and a Survey USA poll that has Harris up by 3. Those are completely off. This margin of error is also huge, 5 points. But the other polls have Trump up by a narrow amount, and in this Hill Emerson poll has Harris up by 1. In the past history, we can go to the state of North Carolina on 538. 538 is famous for being very wrong, like on the left. They always predict something that's going to be a lot more Democrat than it ends up being. So right now they have Trump up in North Carolina by 0.1, and they have a special way of doing their polls. They let in a lot of polls that I've never even seen before, and then the way they weigh them is based on their credibility, but sometimes those numbers don't even make sense. Either way, in 2020 they had Biden up by 1.8. Trump ended up winning by around 1.3, 1.4. So it wasn't that bad of a miss. It wasn't as bad as some of the misses in the Rust Belt, but still a miss nonetheless. And I do think this state's going to go for Trump, and I'm going to be leaving it in that column for him, in that lean column. And then we're going to move down to the state of Georgia. Georgia, huge potential for Democrats. This is a state that after the 2020 results, I kind of thought, okay, Republicans are kind of done here. They are seeing really, really bad trends for them. On the opposite side, the Democrats are seeing extremely good trends to the left in those Atlanta suburbs. The majority of Georgia's population does live around this area, and all those counties saw humongous shifts to the left in the 2020 election. Historic black turnout, suburban trends towards Democrats, all that together would offset any gains that Trump may have made in the rest of the state. And that's why Joe Biden was able to win it, squeak by a win of 12,000 votes and flip the state for the first time since the 90s when Bill Clinton won it. But nowadays, this state looks a little more favorable than I even expected. Trump is up by a 1.7. And this is one of the states where polling is probably the most accurate. Georgia has the most accurate polls out of any of these 7 states. Let's go back in history. We have the 2016 election. Trump was supposed to win it by 4.8. He won it by 5.1. That is extremely accurate. In 2020, it was also very accurate. Trump was supposed to win it by 1. Biden won it by 0.3. That is a very, very good miss right there of around a point. So either way, Trump is up right now by a 1.7. So a 1 point swing in either way wouldn't change the results. Going to 538, we're going to see some similar numbers here with these results. Polls in 2020 had Biden up by a 1.2. He ended up obviously winning by 0.2. So once again, the exact same miss as Real Clear Politics. They both missed by around a point, which is actually really, really good. And then we have a 1.1 win now in Georgia. Trump has been expanding his lead actually over the past week. He leads in the state by 1.1. And this is very surprising to me because this is a state that Democrats have huge potential. There's a lot of growth in Atlanta. So one would expect the state to trend even further to the left. Donald Trump won it by 5, as you saw in 2016. 5-point shift in the next following 4 years would be catastrophic for Republicans. This is a very, very important state, but I expect this to reverse a little bit for the time being. I can't really say what's going to happen in 2028 because it is quite a long time from now, but these polls and these numbers and these early numbers that we're seeing are looking very good for Republicans. Registration numbers, everything, all the data points are looking good for him. And I think this state's going to fall in that tilt column for the former president. And that would pretty much pad his margins and pretty much guarantee him a win through a one Rust Belt state, which is the state of Pennsylvania. That would put him at 270. And that's why him securing North Carolina, Georgia, and Pennsylvania is pretty much his top goal. The most money he's been spending is on PA and GA. Those are the biggest contributors. All of the money that he is putting is mostly going to those 2 states and obviously North Carolina. He has been seeing some visits in Arizona and Nevada, a lot more than Harris. Harris hasn't really put too much into these states, Nevada and Arizona, and I really don't know why. But one guess may be that the state of Arizona is pretty much gone for her because Trump is also up by 1.6% in the state of Arizona. This is another state that's a lot more accurate than the Rust Belt states. And a general theme that I want many people to understand here is that polling in the Sunbelt states are a lot more accurate than Rust Belt states. The Rust Belt voters, those Trump voters, are the voters that mainly just live in the middle of nowhere, to be frank. A lot of these pollers are not polled and they are not found and they don't turn out for anybody except Donald Trump. And that's why Democrats are seeing a lot of success in these 3 states, in those Senate races, those gubernatorial races. But in the presidential scale, Donald Trump is turning out these voters that usually would not turn out for races. These are low propensity voters, and these are voters that are very hard to poll, Wisconsin especially. And back to the state of Arizona, where we see here Trump up 1.6. In 2016, the polls were very accurate, where Trump was only overestimated by 0.5. In 2020, it was extremely accurate as well, where they only overestimated Joe Biden by 0.6%. And that's why I give a lot more credibility to polls in states like Georgia and Arizona than in states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And right now, every single poll in the aggregate in both Arizona and Georgia have Trump up. He leads by 1.6. Back in history, Biden led by 5 at this time. So I'm guessing whether this is going to go up or not. I'm not really too sure. We're just looking at right now. Let's go to 538, see what their numbers are saying. And they also have Trump up by a little bit less. They have him up by 0.5 point. And that's a common theme here because they ended up overestimating Joe Biden by over 2 percentage points. Around 2.3 because he won the state by around 0.3 percentage points, 11,000 votes. And so once again, 538, overestimating Democrats, but not as much as those Rust Belt states. He was only overestimated by just over 2 points. And now they have him losing. Now they have Harris losing to Trump by 0.5. This is another state that I see staying in the Republican column right now by 2 percentage points. It has had very minor margins in 2020, but since Maricopa County has the majority of the state's population, I think it'll shift a little bit back to the right. And I think a lot of these other counties will continue their trend to the right. But the biggest reason why this state will flip Republican is because of the border. This is a border state, probably the border state. And that is probably going to be the number one issue, also with economy, which Trump is favored in as well. But this border state has been hit hard by the immigration problem. A lot of people here in Tucson, Phoenix are paying attention to that border problem. And there's a lot of votes here, a lot of Biden votes, a lot of Biden voters that are not going to be happy voting Harris because of that one issue. And she's been framed in a way that has her to blame for those border issues. And this is why this state has been staying right now firmly in Trump's column in those polls. Very similar story in the state of Nevada. This is a state that has been defying odds of the other Sunbelt states. Usually those Sunbelt states have been shifting to the left. This one has been shifting to the right, very slowly at that. Clark County shifted 1.4 points to the right from 2016 to 2020. And that's what really matters, to be honest. All of these other counties do not matter at all. Washoe County matters a little bit, but we see here 116,000 votes is nothing compared to 521 and 430,000 votes. And the main consensus with the state of Nevada is that if Donald Trump could bring this margin under that 7-point margin, under 7 points, maybe 6-5. If he brings it under that, he is surely guaranteed to win the state. This state is all about Clark County. None of these other counties matter too much unless they see historic trends in some direction. But we all know they won't. It's all going to be Las Vegas. It's all going to be Clark County. Donald Trump lost the county by 9 last time, and he lost the state by around 2. So this time around, if he wants to win it, he has to cut that margin down by around 2 points in order to have a good shot at winning. And the most recent Hill Emerson College poll has it as a tie. Trump has been closing the gap a little bit. Now it is a very, very close race. The state of Nevada usually has been seeing polls that are more accurate as well than those Rust Belt state polls. Harris does lead by 0.7 according to 538. So a little bit more favorable for her than on Real Clear Politics. In 2020, however, Joe Biden was supposed to win by 5.5 almost, and he ended up winning by half that amount. So that just shows us once again where those polls are favored to or towards. And usually Nevada is a state that overestimates Democrats throughout most of election history. Nevada has been famous for overestimating Republicans, but that kind of was defied, that kind of switched up in 2020 when it showed Biden winning by 5.3 consistently through the election cycle, as much as 8 in the summer. In this time in history, he was leading by around 5 to 6. So we don't know how much these margins are going to be overestimating for Democrats or for Republicans, but we can definitely say that the state of Nevada is going to be one of the closest races. And I expect Nevada to flip to Republicans. Republicans have been doing good there. They flipped the gubernatorial race in 2022. They almost unseated a popular incumbent senator in 2022 as well. This is one of the states that I expect will shift right the most out of all these Sunbelt states, obviously behind Florida, because Florida is just a different story of itself. But Nevada is looking good for Republicans. Nevada is shifting the complete opposite way of Colorado, you might say. Colorado is taking hard turns to the left. Nevada is taking hard turns to the right. And Nevada was a state that was very heavily affected by COVID, very heavily affected by the job loss, and also by immigration. It is also almost a border state. It could be considered close to being a border state. And people in Nevada are generally very worried about the border as compared to a lot of other Americans that are not as close to the border. Las Vegas is right here, so it's very close to Arizona. But that's going to be our map for the Sunbelt. But that doesn't end here. I want to take a look at the state of Virginia because we got some interesting numbers out of Virginia. We see that in Virginia right now that we got the latest poll that has Harris only up by 2. And in the 5-way race, this poll had Harris up by 1. And this poll, the previous University of Mary Washington, had Harris up by a huge amount. I believe Harris in that past poll was up between 8 to 10 points. So now her being only up by 2, it does spell something for the state of Virginia. I think Virginia is one of those states where it's going to really surprise us on how close it could be. Right now they're projecting a Harris plus 4.5 win. Back in 2020, Joe Biden was supposed to win by 11.8. He ended up winning the state by around 10. The miss wasn't that bad at all, but it's definitely worth considering some latest numbers that we do have that are much better for Trump than as expected. We're very used to Virginia being the state that is so safe for Democrats, completely gone. I mean, look at these trends. These are really, really good trends for Democrats all across the state. Every county where people live, larger than 10 population, shifted a vast points, 5 to 10 points to the left. And usually when something starts like that, it continues a trend like that. But nowadays, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing the state of Virginia turning into the state of Colorado, because Colorado's map looked the exact same, 5 to 10 point shift in most counties. And Colorado now, I project, is going to stay. It's going to keep that trend, but I think Virginia is going to break off a little bit. And I think Virginia is going to be closer, not that close to flip, but in that lean column around 3 to 5 points, similar to this prediction right here. And that's going to be the Sunbelt for you guys. That's going to be all of these Sunbelt states and how they are most likely going to vote according to recent data, polls, metrics, early voting data. And this is as of now. Things could always change. We are receiving a lot of early vote data. So if these numbers change, I'll make a video about that and I will definitely show you guys. But that's going to be today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe, like my content, share all this with your friends. Thank you guys. I'll check you guys out in the next one.